Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast. Let's dive. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the fray. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner pub to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock Podcast, we're ready for more.
We are live. Look, it's been 3 weeks since I've had my last podcast, and that's mainly because I've had a bunch of cancellations. So the problem with having an interview-style podcast, well, it's a blessing and a curse because I get to meet really cool people from across the world and have great conversations, but that's only when they show up. So I don't have backups just hanging around. So unfortunately, it kind of is what it is. So I've been doing this for over 3 years now, and I kind of roll with the punches.
Wow.
But look, this is yeah, I know, right? This is the Drink O'Clock Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Valencius, and I have the pleasure of having with me Wole Babatunde.
Yes, thank you so
Did I
much.
say it right?
Yes, sir, you did. You got it.
Let's go. Welcome to the podcast. Now, Wole, you're an author, and let me go over all of your acronyms here, right? MD, MPH, PhD, and you gotta explain this one to me because I've never seen it before. FWACP. What is that?
That one is from Nigeria, fellow West Africa College of Physicians.
Okay, all right, that's
It's
cool.
kind
That's
of-
cool, man.
It's kind of the equivalent of being completing your residency in the US. So that's what you get in Nigeria when you complete your residency.
Gotcha. Okay, that's cool, man. That's
Yes.
cool.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So look, your story is pretty inspiring. So I like to start all my podcasts with your background, right? And I think that's basically the whole podcast at this point because a lot of it, right, is your struggle. So, talk to me a little bit about obviously growing up. You grew up in Nigeria, and this could be as long as you want. So tell us about some of your experiences, and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rob. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to be here today to join your show and be a part of inspiring your audience. And people will listen and watch what you do. And that's really wonderful. You do a great job, and I'm happy to be a part of it for this short time that we have together. So, for my background, I was born in Nigeria, Africa, and grew up there. Completed elementary, middle, high school, medical school. Worked a little bit before transitioning to the United States. But my background in Nigeria, I think what's very unique about my story, and which I talked a little bit about in my book, is the fact that it was rough and tough growing up, and life was really difficult, mainly because of the loss of my mother when I was 7 years old and the death of my father when I was 13 years old. So that was really a very tough time and is challenging time in my life. So I think that's the most defining thing I tell people in my background. But that notwithstanding, I was able to adapt and advance, which is the summary or the 360-degree view of what I have in my book, Adapt and Advance, is the story of how I was able to go forward despite the challenges that I went through. And the way I define adapt, it's your ability to accept difficult situations that comes your way and understand that those difficulties, they are not there to stop you, but they are there to be a stepping stone to something bigger, to something greater, which brings us to meaning making, the first section in my book. So I was able to adapt to the loss of both parents very quickly, and of course, not easy as we expected, but I was able to push on, complete high school after the loss of my dad, completed what we call A levels in Nigeria, which is like pre-college, and was able to get to college, medical school, 6 years, 7 years, and complete that, and then did residency for a few years, did some research work, which was actually what brought me to the US. And I realized that there was a lot of gaps in my research training that I needed to fill up, which were not possible to fill up where I was in Nigeria. So I felt coming to a place with more opportunities, higher level of expertise in epidemiology, which was what brought me to the United States. Completed my residency and then moved on. Completed my PhD epidemiology, then moved on to my psychiatry residency. Completed that. I'm currently now a psychiatrist in the US, providing psychiatric care for people.
That's awesome, man. Look, I wanted to be a psychologist. That's
Okay.
what I always wanted to do. I met my fiance in psychology.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
yeah, we met in adolescent psychology. Thank you.
Wow.
But I took probably every level of psychology that I could because I was just fascinated by it. I just love there. You got to respect the way the brain works and
Mm-hmm.
how every person is just different,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you also never know, you know, who people really are. And I was saying this the other day. I was on a work trip, and I said to one of my coworkers, I wonder how many of the people that we've run across are actual serial killers. Some
You
Dexter like stuff, because you'll never know.
you just can't tell by looking at people's faces what's going on in their mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when you have someone that's a psychopath, that's a sociopath. I mean,
Hmm.
they have a very good way of hiding their true intentions and who they are.
They might be very charismatic, very, nice looking, good looking, and,
Hmm.
very friendly, but, just never can tell. Yeah. And, the mind of man is very deep. And just like, the Bible says, who can know it? At times, it's difficult to predict what people are thinking and what people are saying. And
Yeah.
that brings us to psychiatry, psychology, and which deals with the mind. And that makes it a very challenging discipline in medicine because I tell people, if you have a broken leg, they can check it by x-ray, check it by CT scan, and, and know what exactly is going on. They can do an ultrasound of your abdomen if there's something wrong there. But the brain is not like that. So the mind, there's no x-ray that can see people's mind, see through people's mind. And that's what makes us unique and also challenging too, because we go off of what we see people do and we also go off of what we hear people say. So most of our diagnosis, and that's why in the DSM-5, most of the diagnosis we make in mental health has to do with, putting things together like depression. You have to say having excessive guilt, feeling down and depressed. And when you have 5 out of 7, then, we think you have this, which is not the same with the other parts of medicine. The other part of medicine, they have objective ways of like saying exactly what is wrong. For us, is not very, very objective. Is a little bit subjective, but it is what it is to try our best to see what we can do to help people.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I think that's like there's got to be so much of the mind today that we
Mm,
still don't know about, right?
there's a lot.
I think AI will help us. Give it 3 to 5 years. I think there'll be certain things that we'll find out just by running things through AI, but I still don't think AI will ever replace a real human being talking to another real human being and having an authentic conversation. I think there's some authenticity when it's human to human. I'm one of those people, and I'm 39, right? I'm not old. I call myself old, but I know I'm not old. Um, and I want to
That's
talk to
very young.
somebody on the phone.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with the press one and you could go right here and I'll help you. And I'm like, no, I want to talk
To
to a
human.
real human being. And I'm yelling on the phone, and the wifey's behind the green screen. She's always laughing at me. And I'm like, I'm just yelling.
Yeah.
Give me a human, please.
Yeah.
But before we go into anything else, what are your thoughts on how AI might play into what you do as a psychiatrist? Do you think it'll help you with the diagnosis at some point? Obviously, probably not right now because it's still.
Yeah.
I feel like we're still in the infancy stage.
Generally, I think AI is a tool, just like many other things. Is a
Yeah.
tool we have in our toolbox. So what the question is, how do we use this tool? How do we maximize this tool and get the best out of it for our use as much as possible? So I believe AI is very useful, very important, but like you said, there are some parts that AI cannot replace, whereas there are some parts that AI can help. So it can enhance what we are doing as humans. For example, I want to like titrate some medications for patients. There are apps I could say, okay, tell me I'm going to titrate between this medication to this medication, because that app has information, it can give me the titration of how to give the patient the medication, which is faster. In before you will like have to go check your textbooks, pick your pen, pick
Yeah.
your calculator, and be sure you do this, you do this. But now it's quicker. Even right at the bedside of the patient, you could just press your phone and it spits it out to you, and you could explain that to your patient. So it could help to enhance what we do. It can give us some level of speed, making quick decisions. You could check things up very quickly. But in terms of exactly replacing what we do, I strongly believe you still need human being to understand the patient. You still need to talk to the patient and get and then feedback all of it. Then the human being now decide what part of this puzzle can AI help me solve quickly. So AI can enhance what we do, give us speed, but complete replacement, I do not think we are going to get to that point. But it might, the more it can do for us, might be able to achieve a lot more quickly, but you still need a human being at some point to keep enjoying the tool of AI and making use of it. But a patient cannot just take himself or herself to AI and AI does everything. You still need the human brain to know when and where to use AI. That's my perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think as we continue to adapt, I think it will be something as it's never going to take over. I think a lot of people are like doom and gloom with a lot of that. I think there needs to be guardrails, but I
Definitely.
don't think that it needs to be at a point where it can't assist you in what you're doing.
Yeah, I
Now,
think it should not be all bad and it's not all good either. So, but the question is, we need human beings to be able to know how best to use it.
yeah, I agree 100%. Now, um, look, you dealt with some pretty unimaginable loss at a young age. I could never begin to expect how you felt, at that early to lose both parents, right?
Mm.
Especially in, a different country as well, right? Because I'm not familiar with, the bylaws of Nigeria. So tell me a little bit about, like, from that loss, how did that shape the way you see the world as you grew up? And do you think although it was a tragedy, do you think that kind of shaped your outlook, positively or negatively?
Yes, and thank you for that question, Rob. It's a wonderful one. Overall, I can look back now and, and there's this story I always like to use to explain what I want to say now. Joyce Meyer, she's somebody who speaks in the US, and all over the world. And she went through a lot of abuse, in fact, sexual abuse by her biological father. Very tough situation, very bad situation that almost ruined her future. But now she's like 80 years old. She's still going about the world preaching. And she said, I would not, if I have the opportunity, I wouldn't choose a different life. But she's very successful now, and she can look back and say, although it was difficult childhood, but the story has been a blessing to a lot of people. So the same way I could use that to explain my story. I've been listening to her for almost 10, 15 years now, and I enjoyed listening to her. One, looking back now, though I'm not as successful as Joyce Meyer, but looking back at my own life with the little success I've had so far, I don't think I would choose anything else, because I realized that the tragedy and the losses I went through very early, like you said, it went a long way to shape the way I look at life. And it's been quite some time now. At least it's been, at least for my mom, it's been at least 30 years now. She died. And for my dad, 20 years plus. I could look back comfortably right now, um, and say that their losses has turned out good for me. Not that I'm where I want to be yet. There's still a whole lot of things I want to achieve with my life that I'm yet to. But I'm in a good place to say, to comfortably say it has turned for good for me. And also, and enough time has passed between then and now for me to compare many things. I have friends who never had such tragedy in their lives. And I had friends who had it much, much easier when I was having it very, very hard. I had the same thing, family members, friends, and I still see them, I still hear about them, we still hear about each other. And I can comfortably say that overall, you know, those tragedies has not succeeded to negatively define where I am right now. When I compare my lives, of course, we should not compare ourselves with each other because we all have different journey and
It's
very,
true.
very unique perspectives. I believe everybody's DNA is different, and there's a uniqueness to everybody's trip in life. If I will use that
Oh
word,
yeah.
we have different journeys. So, not comparing myself with others, but enough time has passed such that I could see that those that I thought were having it very easy at some point, uh, it has, and I felt then very young, I was having it very hard, very difficult. I can look back now and say, I'm grateful that despite all the hardness, I'm still who I am today. But the biggest thing is it helped me to face life in a resilient way. It helped me to know there's no difficulty that comes my way that I cannot overcome. And another thing is, if you look at life generally, it's not like you have one problem, one face, and you will stop having problem. There have been many other challenges I've had, not even related to the loss of my parents at different phases of life. But I realized that the fact that I was able to look at that mountain in the face when I was very young and decide that I can make it in life despite these setbacks, that same I always reach out to that same energy whenever I have other problems come my way, which I've had plenty of them, not even related to the loss of my parents. So eventually, I would say the loss of my parents very early and the challenges I went through prepared me for many more challenges that I have been through in life. So my outlook to life now is, if you are having it hard, don't see it as a wall to your next level. See it as a stepping stone to your next level. Because whatever skill you are able to get by navigating that hard time will be needed many times again and again to navigate the next challenging times or difficult period that you have in the future, which as humans, unfortunately, I think we are all, to some extent, whether we are rich or whether we are poor, to some extent, we all go through stuffs.
Yeah, and I mean, look, that's a good outlook because I think most people, especially at that age, you would be, and let's be honest, right? In today's world, um, a lot more people would have just kind of crawled up and let themselves emotionally die
Hmm.
instead of picking themselves up. I mean, we're more attuned to that now than when I was growing up. When you were growing up, I think the world we live in now, especially, I'm not so sure about Nigeria. I can't talk about Nigeria, but I can say in the United States, a lot more pampered here, to a certain degree, where, hardships for a 7-year-old, like what you went through, that doesn't, if it happens, it's like crushing, where they're not going to school, they're not going to be a doctor. Their life takes typically a totally different turn. So it is inspiring that you turn that as a young kid and spanned out, and especially now that you're helping people too. It's not like you're in a profession where you're doing everything you can to protect people from themselves. Like you're at the end of the day, you're protecting someone's mental aptitude, which is, it's not easy to do. I respect psychologists, psychiatrists. I respect everything that you guys do, because I think words, especially now in today's climate, can be very, very powerful, and can just, with one sentence, you can change somebody's day, change somebody's life and their outlook. I'm 39, and I swear to you, sometimes people say something to me, and I say to myself, wow, I've never looked at it like that before. And I think if more people did that, especially at a younger age, we would, those people would have a different outlook, is the best way to put it. But listen, you moved from Nigeria to the United States in 2014. Obviously, that was probably a big leap for you. What do you think was the hardest part of that transition, and kind of what carried you through that? I don't know. Did you have anybody that you knew here, or was this, you just took a leap of faith?
Again, thank you for asking. I think just like what I just said, I think the fact that I was able to navigate those early tough challenges, honestly, I can't separate it from the fact that coming to the United States, coming to a new culture, coming to a country that is foreign to me, um, part of what made it easy for me to succeed in the US was the fact that I was able to navigate very tough times when I was growing up as a child. So again, I was able to reach out to the strength I have in me, the skills, the knowledge, the things that worked for me when I was in medical school in Nigeria. I had to reach for it again and again when I came to the US. Of course, it was tough. By the time I came in, I was married with 2 kids, so we came in together. So you could imagine what that means. And I was at the peak in Nigeria when I left, so that made it tougher. Like, I was already a doctor in Nigeria, I already completed residency in Nigeria. I was already head of a department in a big hospital. So
Wow.
everything was like great and good. So to like leave everything to come to the US is like leaving everything I've achieved to begin again, fresh. But I believe it was worth it, because there were some things I wanted to learn, and there's some things I wanted to do with my life, which I needed this environment here to help me enhance becoming it. It's like research. I needed the environment to help me learn, PhD to help me learn some things about research, to help me learn some things about analysis and all of that. And during my period of practice in medicine in Nigeria, I got more fascinated with psychiatry. So I already decided when I was living in Nigeria that if I'm going to do any residency in the US, it's going to be psychiatry. Because psychiatry to me is what is closest to, of all the specialties of medicine, is the one that gives you the opportunity to care most for people. Like, most of our patients, they come down with our disorders mainly because they have major life stressors, like someone
Yep.
going through a divorce that is struggling with depression, someone who lost parents that is struggling with depression, someone who, stresses make people do things if that they don't really want to do originally or ideally. A lot of people using drugs might be using it to cope with post-traumatic stress disorder and stuff like that. So I think psychiatry gives you that unique, not that you don't have that opportunity in other aspects, but psychiatry is unique because it's very close to people's stressors. So when people come down with depression, they come, even schizophrenia, they might have it in their system biologically, but something will happen that will push it out. Maybe,
Yeah.
the loss of a loved one, or a difficult divorce or something, failure or loss of whatever, loss of a job, all of something will happen that will push out the depression, that will push out the psychosis, that will push out all of that. And I see myself talking to people again and again. And I wanted to do something like that because of my background, because of the losses I experienced growing up. I wanted a specialty that will give me the opportunity to talk heart to heart with people, to hold them in their hands and say, it's going to be okay. You know, I've been through things too before, and I can tell you that uh, while not minimizing what you are going through now, that if you have the right attitude, you can overcome it. I might not give my own
Yeah.
personal details most of the time, but I'm saying it from a place in my heart that is reaching out from, and the patients can often feel the authenticity when I'm
Yeah.
talking to them, that this person has gone through a whole lot in his life too, and they get very encouraged when I talk to them. So moving to the US, so I knew I wanted to do PhD, I wanted to do psychiatry residency. So the question is, how do I connect all of that together? So it was tough, it was challenging, it was a new culture. In Nigeria, we go to school in English from elementary school throughout. I've started speaking English, let's say, since the age of 5 years old. But when I
Oh
came
wow.
in,
Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
yeah, so we were colonized by Britain. So we go to school in English. So, but when I came to the United States,
Interesting. How
I
do you
under,
feel about that? Do you feel like that's I don't know. That's that I didn't know that. I like that kind of like throws me for a loop. I thought so Nigerian is not like a that's not something that you guys go through for the whole schooling.
you mean English?
So, all right, hold on. Let me bounce this back. So you start in English and you said at basically at kindergarten?
Yes. Every school in Nigeria is English.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All
But
right. That's cool.
you might have your own language. Like I have my own language, Yoruba. But
Okay.
when you go to school, you have to learn to speak English.
What is the national language of Nigeria? Is it English?
It's English, yes.
So what is the secondary language?
um, English is still secondary because that's not what people
Okay.
speak in their houses. So
That's interesting.
you have your
I
own.
thought Nigerian was I thought they had their own language. I don't know. This is my naivety
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
world, I guess.
Yeah, so there are multiple languages in Nigeria, not just one. So maybe that's part of
Okay.
so maybe that's why English was adopted. So Nigeria has like so many languages, but there are three big ones. Mine is Yoruba, there's Hausa, there's Igbo, but there are many. So let's even pick the three big languages. So
Okay.
that's what people speak in their houses. But when you go to school, when you go to start schooling, every book is in English.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, in school, we learn our language as a subject.
That is wild to me. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that kind of helped you because you were
Yes.
able to come over here and you knew English. It wasn't like a secondary language. You grew up learning it.
It helped to some extent. And that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
say. So it helped because when it helped in terms of when I read and write, it's easy to understand. But I realize when I speak, the English of the United States is not the same as the English of Nigeria.
It's the same thing with Spanish. I call it Spanglish, right? So like, when you speak to someone, I'm half Puerto Rican, so I
Okay.
I made it a point to learn Spanish growing up. It was, it took 6-7 years of it in school and
Wow.
including college.
Wow.
And I'm very good at understanding most of what people say. The problem is you have very different dialects, right? You have
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you have Cubans, you have people from Venezuela, you have Venezuelans. So like they all speak different dialects, and some of them use English words in place. So instead of saying poor, they say for, and then like before you know it, and sometimes they speak so fast. I can imagine it's kind of the same aspect for you guys where you have a couple different languages, then you have English, and then you almost substitute some of that stuff.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
There's a straightforward English, and there are some people maybe they didn't complete education. We call it broken English. which is like a different form of English, but it's just like, very rudimentary, and is not a standard English to speak. But the point where English was a challenge for me in the US is the accent thing. I realize, although I'm speaking English, people may not know what I'm saying because of my accent. So I never, it was a problem I believe I underestimated, because I never thought that could ever be an issue. I'm like, okay, I went to school in English, I can speak English, I can write good English, so uh, there should be no problem with communication. But I come
Yeah.
in here, I realize it's not, the English is not English. So even in the US, I hear there are different, accents for different part, like the southern part where I am, there's the southern drawl, there's the way they speak in New York, so it's not exactly the same.
Yeah,
So
we in the Northeast, we speak very fast and very loud,
yes.
and we're very direct, and we're way different than Missouri or Kansas or California,
Or
or if
South
you're
Carolina,
down
where we
south.
are.
And yeah, South Carolina, Texas, Mississippi. Love my Mississippi people, but
Yeah,
it's a lot of times they're like, you need to slow
damn.
down. I don't know what you were saying, and it's hard because when you're up here, that's how we are, man. We're
Yeah,
fast
yeah.
paced with everything.
Yeah, but I had to find a way of coping, which eventually I had to devise strategies to talk to people in a way they can understand. I try to speak slowly. I try to gesticulate a lot so at least you can pick what I'm saying and stuff like that. But I would say 95, 98% of the time, people hear me and I hear them. So,
Yeah,
but I can
you're fine,
imagine.
man. You're fine. I mean, you could tell you weren't born here, but your English is fine.
Yeah, but I can imagine someone whose language in the country is French and comes to the United States and has to learn English,
Mm.
or maybe if I'd gone to
Eh,
school with my mother language, Yoruba, I can imagine how easy or difficult that would have been for me to learn English. So I think knowing English in school in Nigeria was a very big plus. But eventually, we try our best to work with the accents, to talk in a way people can hear us, and to also listen to people in a way that we can hear them. And yeah, but of course, challenges here and there. The biggest challenge is I came in as with my wife and kids, so we had to survive on very low income at the beginning when I was a student. Can imagine a family of four living on like $1,000. Fine, we saved money before coming. That we changed to dollars, and we had some of it, but we had to live on very low income for a little bit, and but we kept it moving, we kept it going, putting in my best, got a few scholarships here and there, and we just kept pushing on and pushing on and pushing on, and eventually I'm a psychiatrist today. So uh
That's
yeah,
awesome, man.
yeah. So
That's cool. Now you turned a lot of trials into triumphs,
mhm.
right? You went through a lot of adversity. What does resilience look like to you? Like not just a theory, but in practice. And how can someone take kind of what you did and kind of throw, even if it's one thing, one idea, throw that into their life, especially if they're dealing with adversity?
Now I'm trying to summarize the 7 sections in my book, because I would take that as the definition of resilience. Um,
Give us, you know what? Give us one part because we're gonna touch on your book, but I don't want to
okay,
ruin it for people.
okay, okay. So if I would say, for me, resilience is one. I would just stay with the definition of adapt and advance. So I would say adapt means you accept the reality of a difficult situation. You tell yourself this is difficult. You understand? This is a hard situation that I'm going through right now. This is not easy and this is difficult. That's adapt. Then advance is you tell yourself, despite this difficulty, I will continue to make progress. I will not let this grind my life to a stop, because that's what happens to some people when they have some difficult situations. They get grounded, they find it hard to move on. So I would say you have to break it. You have to break that thing that wants to hold you down, and decide that no matter how difficult this is, I will not let my story be all about this problem. I would make sure that I'm able to take steps forward, no matter how little, every single day. And it all begins with interpreting the way we see the problem. Like, in meaning making is what's my attitude towards the problem. Like I just told you about judgment, I told you about myself. I will not let this define me in a negative way. I will take little steps every day. I will interpret my pain as preparation, not as punishment. When we go through pain, we should understand that it is preparing us for something bigger. When we have that mindset, then we could take step one to convert that pain into preparation and not let that pain define us in a negative way.
I like that. I like that. Now, you're a psychiatrist, right? So
So,
let's put it this way: you're at the intersection of medicine, psychology, and spirituality, right? I'm
mhm.
sure that that comes up a lot. How do you balance those worlds in the world you work with your patients? Because it's got to be difficult, whether someone believes in, maybe they're a Christian, maybe they're Muslim. How do you balance all of those things along with obviously the textbooks and also the medicine aspect? Because you're not a psychologist, you're a psychiatrist, so you can also prescribe people medicines and things
Yes,
like that.
yes. So I always clarify with my patients. So I tell them there are three things that matter the most in psychiatric care. Number one, medications. I always tell them I'm a medication man. I've seen patients who come to me and they are like, I don't want your medications. But I would gently also let them know. Unfortunately, that's what I have to offer the most because that's what my training is in, giving you medications that can help. Number
Yep.
one. That said, I always also let them know there's what we call therapy, where we come, and that comes to psychology, uh, which is talk without medications. And I also let people know that is also very important. In fact, there's evidence, for example, in depression, there's evidence that a combination of medication plus therapy provides a higher level of better outcomes compared to only medication, compared with only therapy. So when a patient has depression and you give only therapy or you give only medication, those people will not do as good as when you combine the two together. So I always let my
Yeah.
patients know that a combination of both meds and therapy does a better job. Then there's the third one, which I call lifestyle or accepting personal responsibility. I usually say personal responsibility more because that is something everybody can do something about. You can accept, for example, we talk of exercise, um, we talk about exercise, we talk about um, diet, we talked about all of those things that are little bit of things but can help us to succeed or do very well in life.
Yeah.
And they want directly or indirectly, they all impact our mental health, whether we like it or not. So it's a combination of those three things. And now talking about religion, in addition to all of that, I also let people it's a proven fact for some mental health issues that believing in a higher power helps some people, not necessarily only Christian, but even generally, the fact that you believe in something more than you, helping you, helps people to navigate difficulties. Personally, my parents were Christians and they introduced me to church very early. And that's why in my book, I thought a little bit about faith because it was very, very helpful for me when I was growing up. When things are tough, when things are hard, and when I feel I've lost everything and there's no way out, I have a higher power I can call upon that I believe will come to my aid to help me. But also, I tell people, show me your faith without your work, and I will show you my faith by my work, because faith without work is dead. And that brings us
Yeah.
to medications, therapy, and the third one, accepting personal responsibility. So, why you believe in faith, I would never say because you have faith, don't take meds. I always tell my patients, fine, I don't take psychiatric meds. I don't have any disorders psychiatrically. I hope I don't. But I take med. I
That you don't know of, right?
Yeah, but I take medications. I take medications for other stuffs. So I let
Yep.
people know that I'm not against medications for myself. Why will I be against medications for somebody else? Because those medications I take, they help me to solve some problems in my body. So I always tell people medication is still okay. Although you might be praying and trusting God or whatever you believe in, at the same time, part of faith with works is also taking meds, going for your therapy, talking to people about it, and accepting personal responsibility, especially for exercise, for diet, for things like meditation, all those little bits of things that we talk about. There's a lot of science that shows that even moving around alone, like getting up and walking or jogging or doing whatever, improves your mood rather than just like sitting down in despair and sadness and just not moving forward. So everything is very important. It's our ability to live with balance that matters the most. And I always emphasize that to people all the time. Live your life with balance. Work hard, play hard, and at the same time accept responsibilities for those things that will also help you to be the best version of yourself.
I mean, and that's a good point. And I'll tell you this. Growing up, my stepdad was bipolar. So,
Okay.
and also my stepmom was bipolar. So my mom and dad found equally interesting people when they got divorced. And I'll tell you, it sounds like you're doing it right because, I know my stepdad dealt with a lot of psychiatrists and I think psychiatrists do get a bad rap, right? It's all they do is, oh, that medicine didn't work. They give you a new med
Another one,
and
yes.
they send you on your way. And I'll tell you, I have that stigma just because I've seen my bipolar's it's a shitty disorder, man.
It's
It is
difficult.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a fun one. There's a lot of chemical
Hmm.
imbalance. There's a lot of highs, a lot of lows,
Hmm.
a lot of just incidents that happen.
Yeah.
And then the medications cause seizures, and there's a lot of things that happen. So you got to take anti-seizure meds, right? So you got a lot going on. But I've seen a lot of psychiatrists growing up that their prerogative was take these meds, go home, and it was a 10-minute visit. It sounds like you're doing it in a much better, more I was gonna say herbalistic way, but that's probably not adequate. You're dealing with it in a couple different avenues. I do agree with medications, especially when you're talking about hormonal or imbalances in the brain. Um, but I think the other sides are just as important, right? Having accountability
Hmm.
for things you do and the things that you're doing, because I think that's important. I'll be the first person to tell you I am wrong all the time, and I'm the first person to say, "Hey, my bad, I'm wrong." It's a part. I've tried to do that very early on because I think if you take ownership of the things that you fuck up, it helps. It helps me at least go, all right, I messed that up. That's my bad. No one else's fault. It's mine. Ownership, I do think, is important. And
Accepting responsibility is key.
yeah, and growing up, I'm Christian. I'm Catholic. I was baptized Catholic, and I've gone through that. I went to Sunday school, and I went to church a little bit here and there. I lost my faith for a while, and I still don't know if I have it. Uh, but I do believe that there's something else when we go. So I'm still discovering that. I've interviewed a couple different people that have very different
Views.
previews of that. Yeah, and it's kind of threw me for a loop, right?
Mm,
So I think I'm still in that discovery phase, and I'll get there at some point. I do think there's something up there. I don't know.
mm.
I don't know what's there, but there's definitely life after death. I do very much believe in that. Now, for you, you had 60 different research papers, which is very impressive. You had the NIH F99 grant, which is very significant, right?
Mhm.
How did that make you feel to be so recognized with that grant?
It makes me feel good, of course,
Yeah.
and it looks good on my CV. And
Adds
also,
to the acronyms, you know.
also, it was one of the things I really looked up to getting, and one of the reasons I felt coming to the United States was necessary for me to be able to achieve some aspects of the things I want to do with my life. So I'm really grateful for that. Some of the papers were, I just love research. I love asking questions and getting answers to things. I love exploring and knowing why things are happening the way they are. And that's what research is all about. Research is asking questions. And I love creativity. The research is about creativity. You could just sit down and say, okay, like most of the more recent papers I've written during residency in psychiatry had to do with adverse childhood experiences, which means childhood trauma, mainly because of my own childhood trauma. Uh, that's one area I'm looking at more recently now. What are the relationship between adverse childhood experiences and depression? And I got this big data set by CDC to explore that during my residency. And even now, I still meet with colleagues that will still run it and got some papers published. Then, what's the relationship between adverse childhood experiences and take cannabis use and other substance uses like that? And it's interesting what we did find is there's a very high correlation between when someone who experienced multiple trauma in childhood, they are more likely to be depressed as an adult. In fact, the odd ratio is a 4, meaning the higher the number of childhood experiences. The CDC data set, I think, add up to 15 adverse childhood experiences. So we added it together. So we compared one adverse childhood experience, 0, meaning you don't have any, 1, 2 to 3, and then those who have more than 4. And we realized that those who had more than 4, they were like 4 times more likely to have depression compared to those who had 0 adverse childhood
Wow.
experiences. And we also found that those who had more than 4 too were more likely to use drugs, although the only substances they had on the data set we used was smoking, cigarettes, alcohol, and cannabis use. We didn't have outside of that. So we did realize that substance use was much higher among that, which tells us something important. Although it's like the data we use is a big survey, not like a small data that we follow people over time, which is something I would like to explain in the future. But that tells me that there's something that trauma does to the brain when you experience it as a child that make people to more likely experience depression as an adult. The same way that makes people more likely to use drugs and substances. At times we just see people doing some things as adults and you'll be wondering what's wrong with them because you just don't know the kind of trauma that they experienced in their childhood. Trauma does something to the brain that we cannot see. Um,
Yeah.
and personally, I'm interested in that because of some of the trauma I experienced in childhood and some of the experiences. I think I had up to 4 advanced childhood experiences too that I was able to use in the questionnaire that was used for that data set. But I'm glad I'm glad I'm lucky that at least I escaped so many disorders. But not everybody will be able to escape it. So for me, I'm happy that I'm able to explore some of these things. And my intention long term in the future is to be able to like help people who have experienced a lot of childhood trauma and to mitigate some of these things like depression that can happen later like substance use that can happen later. And if there's something we can actually even do, hopefully in the future, where we could recognize people much more earlier, maybe when they are 18, the definition of a child is 18 years and below. Maybe by the age of 18, if there's a way we could recognize those who are more likely to have adverse outcome because of the childhood trauma, and there's something we could do, even if it's just therapy or talking to them or letting them realize what they can do, accept responsibility for, to prevent the outcome, or even if the outcome will eventually still happen, is there something we can do to reduce the intensity? Those are the kind of things in my head right now that I really want to be able to have questions I really want to have answers to, and hope I will have some funding to be able to implement to help people that have gone through that. But overall, I've enjoyed research, I've enjoyed asking questions, trying to find answers, and hopefully we can get it to the point where we could actually solve real life problems based on the answers we have.
Love it. Love it. Now, let's talk about your book.
Yes.
Adapt and Advance, a
Mm-hmm.
faith-based step-by-step guide to turning trials into triumphs.
Yes.
Now, I'm an audiobook guy, and I just bought your book. I always like to support
Thank you so
people
much.
that I
Thank you
have on
so
my show.
much.
Of course. I'm an audiobook guy. I got a long drive to
I'm
work,
like
so
that.
I'll
I'm
listen to
like
it at some
you.
point.
I'm like you too. It's easier.
I wish I had time to sit down and read it. I don't anymore.
I
You
used to.
know,
I used to in the past, but I don't anymore too.
I love the audiobook stuff, but it's I appreciate what you're doing. We kind of glanced on it. We've talked about some of the points, but yeah, obviously you laid out a step-by-step framework of turning suffering into growth. Now,
Mhm.
we don't want to spoil your book. We want everybody to listen, and we want everyone to buy it. What was the turning point for you where you knew you had to put that message into writing? And I love when authors talk about that click moment, because it's different for everybody.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. For me, I actually attempted writing something at the end of about the end of medical school, um, which I published at that time, long time. It's something much more smaller, very small, maybe like 50 pages or so at that time. I don't even have any copy any longer with me now. It's a long time ago. But since then, I knew. So going through medical school at that time, I was also involved in my local church then, and I had a small group where I was leading. We call it Home Cell back in Nigeria, where I had the opportunity to like teach every Sunday evening to a small group of people. And I also had the opportunity of having young people invite me to talk, maybe youth meeting here and there. And I was able to host a meeting every month at that time. So I just knew my story was extremely inspiring to young people at that time. And I really, really wanted to put the words out the more. So fast forward, finished medical school, got busy in Nigeria, eventually transitioned to the United States, of course, got busier. I always tell my
We're
wife,
always more busy. We're always more busy here for some reason. I don't know.
I always
No work-life balance.
I always tell my wife, like, I've never been this busy in my life before. When I was doing residency, plus I'm not as young as I was when I went through medical school in Nigeria. So I always say I've never been this busy in my life. Like, you've just gone to be on your feet at times, like busy. Even now that I've finished residency as an attending, some days can be like grueling, like busy and busy and busy. So fast forward, life got busy, but I decided that as soon as I got the chance, I'm going to put some things down into writing. Plus, I've had some experience, a lot more new things in my life compared to the one I wrote many years ago. So in residency, I started, that point came in my third year when I started writing bits and pieces. But the biggest one came in May 2020, 2025, May last year. So May last year, I went for a conference, association, American Psychiatry Association, and one of my mentors published his book. And I told him, I've always wanted to put my story in a book, but seeing you write yours, it's like a spark inside of me, and I know it's like turning on a light. It's time to get this done. And I promised him that I will make sure that I reference him in my book, which I did. You know, he was one of those people that spoke at the beginning of the book, just
That's
like,
awesome.
yeah, Dr. Clark. So that was the point. So beginning from May last year, I just got into it. And I started working slowly, asking questions from people, talking to people that have self-published, and asking what would be the best way to go about it. Should I just write? Should I self-publish? Should I give it to a big publishing company? And all of those questions. In the process, I stumbled on selfpublishing.com, which eventually, though it's a paid service, but they were really great. They like mentor you through every single process, everything you need to know about a book. And I got the book. The title of the book of the director of the company is published, which I got the book and was very helpful for me. And I got into it actively October, November 2024. And 7 months was intense, like very, very intense. And I worked hard. I had to wake up 3 a.m. every morning. And at this time, I was in a
Oh,
resident doctor. I had to wake
not me. 3 a.m. Nah, not me.
yeah, and I shared some of the story in the book. When I was in medical school, there was a time I was struggling in my fourth year, and I had to wake up 1 a.m. every day for almost a whole year. Like I had to like do something I've never done. That's why I said some of the things I did much younger, they became helpful for me now. And some of the strengths I was able to put together then, I could pick them up again and use them. So I was waking up 3 a.m. every morning. When I wake up in the morning, apart from praying very quickly, I sit down, I begin to dictate my book. After dictating it, put it together, I know slowly. So I did a 1 month challenge, which was one of the things they taught us in self-publishing school. So it's a 30-day challenge that you should finish the first draft in 30 days. For me, my first draft was November to December 20, middle November to middle December, and I finished the first draft in 30 days. So
Wow.
the next 30 days was my own personal edits, because of course they said the first draft is going to be very rough. Don't correct anything, don't go back to it, just put your ideas on paper, spit it out. And after that, then you have 1 full month again to look at it, to make sure that the drafts, is well, it's well. And then after that, it goes to professional editing, which now took like 3 months or so, and then went back forth for like 5 times, and boom, it was published in May 2025.
That is awesome, man.
But
How
it
does it
was
feel
a
to
lot
be
of
like
work.
how does it feel to be an author? Like
Oh,
you got your name on a book.
yes, I feel so good holding it every time. In fact, I hold a copy with me 24/7 now. It's a big project. It's like the summary of my life and all the things I've learned in my journey. So there are so many nuggets on every page that is very, very useful and helpful. So I really, really encourage people to go get it.
I had a buddy of mine. I work in the insurance industry.
Okay.
He actually just wrote 2 books,
Wow. Wow.
and he's been doing it for a little while. And he sent me. He actually was in our office and he gave me 2 copies of his book and he signed. Had a little personal stuff in it. And I'm like, it's gotta be a pretty cool thing, man, to be able to say, hey, I wrote a book, even if nobody reads or whatever.
Yeah.
You wrote a book, your name's on it, and it's out there. And I really appreciate that, especially because you put a lot of your personal life into that too.
Yes.
And I always say this, and maybe it's not super appropriate, but I always say it takes a balls to put your life out there on the line and put it in paper, man.
I struggle with that a lot. There were a lot of times I'm like, should I write this? Should I not write this? How far can I go, with my stories? How much of my story can I put out there? But I just feel my motivation is to inspire people. So I just decided not to hold back too much and just put it out there. Open it, inspire people.
I love the inspiration. I appreciate everything you're doing. Let's end with this. Tell my audience, where can they find all your stuff, and do you have anything going on in the near future that we can look forward to?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon. I have all the copies now. Just type in Adapt and Advance. I don't think there's any other book that is exactly that name right now. So Adapt and Advance, and if you are able to put in my name, Oluwole Babatunde, or yeah, I believe with Adapt and Advance will pull it out. Just look for the Jumping
We'll
Man.
put we'll put a copy. We'll put a copy of the link in the podcast description for you, so it'll
Okay.
be easy to click on.
So yeah, that's where you find it, and I can assure you, it's going to give you some great nuggets. Going to learn a few things about me, and I have not just my stories. Every chapter has a story of a very successful person. I don't consider myself very successful yet, but I'm moving towards it day by day, working on it. But at least my story, and then as somebody who is like on a small level of success, then I talked about somebody who is a higher level of success that used that same principle and that worked for them. Kind of like a storybook. I'm sure you will enjoy the stories.
Awesome, man. Well, look, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to hang out with me down here on the Drink O'Clock podcast.
And I appreciate you
You
too inviting me. Thank you so much. I really had fun.
can absolutely good. So you can find my podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, and on socials, it's Drink O'Clock Pod on basically everything. And we'll have this episode up probably tomorrow. I
Oh,
know
wow.
AI
That's good.
is a beautiful thing.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely watch more of your shows too.
Appreciate you, Wally. You have a great night, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
On a stormy night where legends unfold, there's a podcast that's breaking the mold. Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock podcast. Let's dive. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the flame. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner pub to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock podcast, we're ready for more. We're ready for more. With a mix of folklore and rebel cheer, we'll guide you through tales of whiskey and beer. From Irish shores to lands afar, grab your friends, it's time to raise